The transport shuttle touched down on Luna Station with barely a whisper, its advanced dampeners absorbing the impact so gently that Ambassador Elena Vasquez didn't even feel the landing. Through the viewport, she watched the gleaming metal corridors of humanity's premier diplomatic facilities stretch out before them like arteries of polished silver. "Nervous?" asked Captain Hayes, the grizzled military attaché assigned to their delegation. His weathered face showed the kind of skepticism that Elena had grown accustomed to over the past 6 months of preparation. "About meeting our first confirmed alien species?" "Just a little," Elena replied with dry humor, adjusting her formal diplomatic jacket. The weight of humanity's future felt heavier than the ceremonial gold braiding on her shoulders. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss, and Elena stepped into the reception bay. What she saw made her pause. Standing in the center of the vast chamber was the smallest delegation she had ever encountered. 3 figures, barely reaching her waist in height, waited patiently beside what appeared to be their own shuttle. Their skin had a translucent quality like pale jade, and their large, dark eyes seemed to take in everything around them with quiet intensity. The central figure stepped forward, moving with careful, deliberate grace. When it spoke, its voice carried a musical quality that the translation device rendered into flawless English. "I am Kess of the Third Circle, speaking for the Galactic Coordination Assembly. We come seeking dialogue with the representatives of Earth." Elena bowed slightly, following diplomatic protocol. "Ambassador Elena Vasquez, representing the United Earth Government. We're honored by your visit and eager to begin discussions about humanity's potential membership in your assembly." Captain Hayes shifted beside her, and Elena caught his barely concealed smirk. She understood his reaction. After decades of science fiction preparing humanity for first contact with towering, powerful aliens, the reality felt almost anticlimactic. These beings looked fragile, almost childlike. Despite their obvious technological superiority, Kess seemed to notice Hayes's expression, but showed no reaction beyond a subtle tilt of its head. "Perhaps we should begin with a tour of your facilities? We are most interested in understanding human society and capabilities." The next several hours felt like an elaborate dance of polite inquiry and careful answers. Kess and its companions asked pointed questions about human history, technology, and social structures. Elena found herself growing increasingly frustrated with their line of questioning. They seemed particularly interested in humanity's conflicts, their military capabilities, and what Kess termed their response to existential pressures. "You fought 2 global wars within a span of 30 years, Kess observed as they stood in the station's historical archives. "Both conflicts resulted in unprecedented destruction and loss of life. Yet you described this period as leading to your greatest technological and social advances. This seems contradictory." Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. Humanity learned from those conflicts. "We've maintained global peace for over a century now. Our wars taught us the value of cooperation and the dangers of division." "Interesting." Kess made a note on what appeared to be a transparent tablet. "And your space exploration program. You call it peaceful, yet every ship carries weapons." Captain Hayes stepped forward, his diplomatic training barely containing his irritation. "Standard defensive measures. Space is dangerous, and we've encountered hostile environments." "Hostile environments," Kess repeated slowly. "Not hostile species, of course, since we are your first contact." "Asteroid fields, radiation storms, equipment failures," Hayes clarified. "We prepare for any eventuality." "Ah, yes. We reviewed your mission reports. 17 successful rescues of stranded vessels in the past 5 years. Quite remarkable response times, considering the distances involved." Kess's large eyes fixed on Hayes with what might have been curiosity. "Your crews seem willing to risk their own lives for strangers quite readily." "That's what we do," Hayes said simply. Elena sensed an undercurrent in the conversation that she couldn't quite identify. Kess's questions felt less like diplomatic curiosity and more like an evaluation. Every answer was weighed and measured, and she began to wonder what criteria humanity was being judged against. The formal negotiations began the next day in Luna Station's primary conference chamber. The room was designed to impress, with a magnificent view of Earth rotating slowly below and the starfield stretching beyond. Elena had hoped the setting would remind everyone present of the wonder of making contact across the vast distances of space. Instead, the talks quickly became an exercise in frustration. The Galactic Assembly's terms were strict and non-negotiable. Humanity would be granted membership, but with severe restrictions. Human ships could travel only within their own solar system. Human colonies would be limited to 3 worlds, maximum. All human military vessels would be decommissioned, with defense handled by Assembly peacekeepers. These terms are unacceptable, Elena stated firmly. Humanity has spent centuries reaching for the stars. You're asking us to voluntarily cage ourselves. Kess's expression remained neutral. The Assembly has had unfortunate experiences with aggressive species. These limitations ensure stability and peace. Aggressive? Elena's voice rose despite her diplomatic training. We've been peaceful for generations. Yet you maintain weapons, you train soldiers. Your entertainment media celebrates conflict and violence, Kess replied calmly. These are concerning patterns. Captain Hayes leaned forward. Have you actually experienced aggression from other species, or are you just afraid of the possibility? Something flickered across Kess's features, too quick to interpret. The Assembly makes decisions based on careful evaluation of risk factors. The negotiations continued for 3 more days, growing more tense with each session. The Assembly delegation remained polite but inflexible. Elena began to suspect that humanity was being offered the diplomatic equivalent of a prison sentence. On the 4th evening, as Elena reviewed notes in her quarters, her communication system chimed. Captain Hayes appeared on the screen, his expression grim. Elena, we need to talk. I've been monitoring communications between the Assembly ships and, well, there are a lot more ships out there than just their little shuttle. Elena's blood ran cold. How many more? At least 50 vessels holding position beyond Pluto, big ones. Combat configurations that our analysts don't recognize, but the energy signatures are off the charts. The pieces clicked together in Elena's mind with sickening clarity. It's not a negotiation, it's an ultimatum. Looks that way. The question is, what do we do about it? Before Elena could answer, the emergency klaxons began wailing throughout the station. Red lights bathed the corridors as the automated systems announced a general alert. Elena rushed to the command center, Hayes beside her. Through the massive viewport, she could see ships materializing out of what had appeared to be empty space. Dozens of sleek, predatory vessels, their hulls gleaming with an oily iridescence that hurt to look at directly. Unknown vessels, identify yourselves. The station commander's voice echoed through the comm system. The response came as weapons fire. Brilliant beams of energy lanced out from the attacking ships, striking the station's outer hull with tremendous force. The entire structure shuddered and Elena was thrown against the console. Those aren't Assembly ships? Hayes realized, helping Elena to her feet. The configurations are completely different. Through the chaos, Elena spotted Kess standing calmly at an observation window, apparently unconcerned by the violence erupting around them. The small alien's companions had vanished, but Kess remained, watching the battle with what looked like professional interest. Elena fought her way across the shaking deck toward the alien diplomat. Kess, what's happening? Who are these attackers? Kess turned those large, dark eyes toward her with something that might have been sadness. They call themselves the hegemony. They are the reason the Assembly requires such careful evaluation of potential members. You knew this was going to happen? We suspected. The hegemony has been tracking our diplomatic missions. They prefer to eliminate potential allies before formal contact can be established. Kess's voice remained calm despite the explosions echoing through the station. It appears your species will face its evaluation under more direct circumstances than we had planned. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's failing life support systems. Evaluation? The Assembly does not simply admit new species based on negotiation, Ambassador Vasquez. We must observe how they respond when everything they value is at stake. Kess moved toward what Elena now realized was not a window, but some kind of monitoring station. Your talks with our diplomatic team were merely the preliminary assessment. Another massive impact shook the station, and Elena heard the sound of tearing metal as a section of the outer hull gave way to the attacking ship's weapons. Our people are dying, Elena shouted over the noise. Kess nodded gravely. Yes, and how they die, how they fight, how they choose to face extinction. These things will determine humanity's true worthiness for membership in galactic civilization. Elena stared at the small alien in horror. This is all a test? Everything is a test, Ambassador. The question is whether humanity will pass or fail. Kess's finger. Elena stumbled through the darkened corridors of Luna Station, emergency lighting casting everything in hellish red shadows. The attackers had systematically targeted the station's power grid, but somehow life support remained functional. Behind her, Kess moved with surprising grace despite the chaos, those large eyes seeming to see perfectly in the dim light. The command center, Elena gasped, pulling herself along the handrails as another impact sent vibrations through the entire structure. We need to coordinate the defense. Ambassador, perhaps you should seek shelter, Kess suggested quietly. Your safety is paramount for future negotiations. Elena turned on the small alien, anger overriding diplomatic protocol. My people are dying and you're worried about future negotiations? This is insane. Is it? Kess tilted its head with that same curious expression. Tell me, what would you sacrifice to protect strangers you've never met? Before Elena could respond, they reached the command center. The scene inside was controlled chaos. Captain Hayes stood at the central console, his uniform torn and bloodied from flying debris, coordinating with whoever was still alive on the station. Luna Station to Earth Defense Command. We need immediate evacuation protocols for civilians, Hayes barked into his headset. The outer ring is lost, but we can hold the intersections for maybe an hour. Elena pushed through the emergency personnel to reach him. Hayes, what's our situation? Bad and getting worse, he replied grimly. Those ships out there have technology that makes our best weapons look like firecrackers. They're not trying to destroy the station quickly, though. They're taking their time, like they want to study how we respond. Elena shot a meaningful look at Kess, who observed the proceedings with clinical detachment. Sir, one of the junior officers called out, we're getting reports from across the system. Ships are appearing near the Mars colonies, the asteroid mining facilities, even the research stations around Jupiter. Hayes cursed under his breath. A coordinated attack on everything we've built. How many ships are we talking about? Conservative estimate? Over 300 vessels, sir. They're everywhere. The command center fell silent except for the distant sounds of weapons fire and groaning metal. Elena felt the weight of humanity's potential extinction settling on her shoulders. Earth. Defense response estimates 6 hours before our main fleet can reach. U.S., the communications officer reported quietly. The Mars defense grid is holding, but barely. Elena watched Kess absorb this information with the same calm interest. The small alien seemed almost to be taking notes, though Elena couldn't see any recording device. Hayes, get me a channel to the attacking fleet, Elena decided. If they want to talk, I'm willing to negotiate. Ambassador, they've ignored all hails since the attack began, Hayes protested. And then we keep trying. We don't give up. Hayes nodded grimly and began working the communications array. After several minutes, he shook his head. Nothing. They're jamming us completely. A new voice crackled over the emergency frequency. Luna Station, this is Captain Morrison aboard the transport vessel Determination. We're 15 minutes out with medical supplies and evacuation capability for 300 personnel. Elena felt a spark of hope. That's one of our deep space cargo haulers. What's it doing in the inner system? Hayes checked his tactical display. She was outbound for the Titan research stations when the attack started. Morrison's coming back to help. Sir, another officer interrupted. I'm showing 17 more civilian vessels changing course toward Luna Station. Cargo ships, research vessels, even a few private craft. Elena stared at the tactical display as it populated with dozens of small icons, all converging on the battle zone. They're all coming back? Looks like it, ma'am. Every human ship within a day's travel is turning around to help. Kess moved closer to the display, studying the patterns of approaching ships with obvious interest. Your civilian vessels carry weapons? Some defensive systems, Hayes answered curtly. Nothing that could stand up to what's attacking us. Yet they come anyway. That's what humans do, Elena said firmly. We don't abandon each other. The first of the returning civilian ships arrived 20 minutes later. The Determination, a massive cargo hauler designed for long-haul freight runs between planets, had somehow been retrofitted with emergency defensive systems during its inbound flight. Elena watched through the viewport as the ship's crew used cargo manipulator arms to physically grab pieces of station debris and hurl them at the attacking vessels. That's creative, Hayes admitted with grudging admiration. More ships arrived in rapid succession, each one adding their own improvised contribution to the defense. A scientific research vessel began broadcasting false sensor readings to confuse enemy targeting systems. 3 mining ships worked together to create a debris field that forced the attackers to alter their approach vectors. A luxury passenger liner had somehow weaponized its decorative plasma fountains. Sir, we're getting coherent communication from the civilian fleet, the communications officer announced. They're forming an organized defensive perimeter. Elena felt tears threatening as she listened to the radio chatter. Ship's captains and crew members, many of whom had never worked together before, were coordinating like they had trained as a unit their entire lives. No one was claiming command authority or arguing about jurisdiction. They simply saw what needed to be done and did it. Luna Station, this is Captain Rodriguez aboard the research vessel Newton. We've analyzed the enemy weapon signatures and think we've found a weakness in their targeting systems. Transmitting technical data now? Hayes looked up from his console in amazement. They cracked the alien targeting system in 45 minutes using nothing but research equipment. Elena glanced at Kess, who was now watching the battle with what she could only describe as fascination. More human reinforcements continued to arrive. But Elena could see that they were still vastly outnumbered and outgunned. The attacking fleet had taken casualties. But they were adapting to human tactics with mechanical efficiency. Ambassador, Captain Hayes called out. I'm showing massive energy buildup in the enemy fleet. Looks like they're preparing for a final assault. Elena nodded grimly. All civilian vessels, this is Luna Station. Recommend immediate evacuation of the area. We appreciate your assistance, but negative, Luna Station, came the immediate response from Captain Morrison. We didn't come here to run away. Whatever happens, we face it together. The response was echoed across the communication channels. Every civilian ship in the area, every crew member who could have easily escaped to safety, chose to stay. Elena felt something shift in the atmosphere of the command center. Kess had gone very still, those large dark eyes fixed on something beyond the viewport that Elena couldn't see. Is that your answer? Elena asked the small alien. Is that what you needed to see? Kess was quiet for a long moment, then slowly turned to face her. When the alien spoke, its voice carried a weight and authority that Elena had never heard before. Ambassador Vasquez, Captain Hayes. I must ask you both to step away from the command console. Hayes instinctively moved protectively in front of Elena. What are you planning? What I was chosen to do? Kess approached the main communication array with movements that no longer seemed fragile or hesitant. We're alone now. Let me fulfill the role I was chosen for. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. There was something different about Kess now, something that made the air itself seem to vibrate with barely contained energy. Kess placed what Elena had assumed were delicate hands on the communication console. Instantly, every screen in the command center blazed with activity. Data streams that Elena couldn't begin to understand flowed across the displays. And she realized that the small alien was somehow interfacing directly with Luna Station's entire computer network. Kess, what are you doing? Talking to someone who can end this, Kess replied without looking up. The alien's voice now carried harmonics that the translation system couldn't quite handle, creating an almost musical quality that resonated in Elena's bones through the viewport. Elena watched something impossible happen. The attacking fleet, which had been preparing for their final assault, suddenly stopped moving entirely. Every ship hung motionless in space as if frozen in time. How? Hayes whispered. Kess finally looked up from the console, and Elena saw that those large, dark eyes now held depths that she hadn't noticed before. Ancient depths. The Assembly has many member species, Ambassador. Some are diplomats, some are warriors, some are traitors. Kess stepped back from the console, and Elena could see that the alien's translucent skin now showed patterns of light flowing beneath the surface like living circuits. And some of us are judges? Elena felt understanding dawn with terrifying clarity. You're not just an observer. I am what my people call a weigher of souls, Kess confirmed. I evaluate species for membership not through negotiation, but through trial. The hegemony serves that purpose, though they believe they act independently. You control them? Elena asked, horror growing in her voice. Control is too strong a word. They exist, they are genuinely hostile, and they truly would destroy your species if permitted. But their timing, their targets, their methods, these can be influenced when evaluation is required. Elena sank. Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Assembly Embassy, watching Earth turn slowly below. 3 months had passed since what historians were already calling the Luna Trial, and the changes to human civilization had been staggering. The small blue planet that had once seemed so large now felt like merely the first step in humanity's journey to the stars. The integration protocols are proceeding faster than we anticipated, Kess remarked. Joining Elena at the massive viewport, the small alien moved with the same careful grace as before. But Elena now understood the vast intelligence and ancient wisdom contained within that deceptively fragile form. Humans adapt quickly, Elena replied. It's one of our better qualities. Through the transparent aluminum, Elena could see the orbital construction platforms that surrounded Earth like a growing metallic constellation. Ships from dozens of Assembly member species worked alongside human engineers, sharing technology and techniques that would have seemed like magic just months before. The sight never failed to amaze her. Your species continues to surprise my colleagues, Kess observed. Most newly admitted members require decades to develop interstellar trade networks. Humanity established profitable relationships with 6 different species in the first month. Elena smiled. Captain Hayes said it best, we've been preparing for this our whole history without knowing it. Every time we met a new culture on Earth, we learned how to find common ground. Speaking of Captain Hayes, I understand he's accepted assignment as liaison to the Assembly Defense Corps. He has. Turns out our defensive innovations during the trial caught their attention. The idea of using civilian vessels and improvised weapons has applications they hadn't considered. Elena turned from the viewport to face Kess directly. He's not the only one making career changes. Dr. Morrison from the Determination has been recruited by the Assembly Science Division. They want to study human innovation techniques. Kess nodded approvingly. The Assembly believes in utilizing the unique strengths of each member species. Humanity's gift for adaptation and creative problem-solving fills a significant gap in our capabilities. Elena had learned over the past months that the Galactic Assembly was far more complex than she had initially understood. Rather than a simple confederation of planets, it was an intricate network of species, each contributing their specialized abilities to the greater whole. The Krillian race provided advanced manufacturing technology. The Synth were masters of biological sciences. The Vorlak specialized in energy manipulation on massive scales, and now humanity would contribute their own unique strengths to this galactic community. Elena, Kess said quietly, there is something we need to discuss. The Assembly Council has made a decision regarding humanity's role in the greater galaxy. Elena felt a familiar flutter of nervousness. Even after all this time, conversations with Kess could still reveal surprises that reshaped her understanding of reality. What kind of decision? Kess gestured toward a quieter section of the observation deck, away from the busy technicians and diplomats who filled the embassy. Elena followed, her footsteps echoing softly in the vast space. Your species' performance during the trial has created what my people call a paradigm cascade, Kess explained. The Assembly has been forced to reconsider some fundamental assumptions about civilization and survival, such as, for millennia, we have operated under the belief that successful species must choose between individual freedom and collective security. Most civilizations that achieve interstellar capability do so by sacrificing personal autonomy for the greater good. They become efficient, unified, but ultimately predictable. Elena nodded slowly. Like the hegemony? The hegemony is an extreme example, but yes. They achieved technological supremacy by eliminating all individual thought, all creative deviation from approved patterns. They are powerful precisely because they are uniform. Kess paused, those large dark eyes reflecting the starlight from beyond the viewport. Your species has shown that strength can come from diversity, that unity can coexist with individual choice. And that changes things? It changes everything, Kess confirmed. The Assembly has voted to restructure its approach to galactic governance based on what they observed during your trial. We are calling it the Humanity Protocol. Elena felt a surge of pride mixed with apprehension. What does that mean exactly? It means that future species evaluations will include assessments of creative potential and adaptive capability, not just technological advancement and social stability. It means the Assembly will begin encouraging diversity rather than merely tolerating it. Kess moved closer to the viewport, watching a human cargo ship dock with an alien research vessel. Your species has become the template for a new kind of galactic civilization. Elena was quiet for a long moment, absorbing the implications. That's a lot of responsibility. Indeed. And that brings me to the Council's specific proposal. Kess turned back to Elena with an expression that might have been anticipation. They want to establish humanity as the Assembly's first adaptive response corps, which means, when the Assembly encounters situations that require unconventional solutions, human teams would be deployed to find creative approaches. When new species require evaluation, human observers would work alongside species like mine to provide different perspectives. When crises arise that challenge existing protocols, you want us to be the Assembly's troubleshooters, Elena realized. In the most respectful sense of that term, yes. Your species would maintain complete autonomy over your own worlds and colonies, but would also serve as the Assembly's specialists in adaptive thinking and crisis innovation. Elena looked out at the bustling orbital platforms, imagining human teams spreading throughout the galaxy, bringing their unique perspective to challenges that had stumped alien civilizations for centuries. What about the risks? We've seen what the galaxy contains, species like the hegemony that wouldn't hesitate to eliminate us if they saw us as a threat. That is precisely why the Assembly needs humanity's capabilities. Kess replied seriously. The hegemony is only one of several hostile forces that threaten galactic stability. There are machine civilizations that convert entire worlds into computing matrices. There are energy beings that consume the cores of stars for sustenance. There are hive minds that seek to assimilate all biological life. Elena felt a chill despite the embassy's carefully controlled environment. And you think we can help deal with these threats? I think you already have, Kess said simply. During your trial, human crews developed 17 new tactical approaches that had never been attempted in thousands of years of Assembly military history. 3 of those approaches have already been incorporated into standard defense protocols. Elena smiled despite her concerns. Hayes would love to hear that. Captain Hayes is currently working with Assembly strategists to develop training programs based on human military doctrine. The concept of thinking like the enemy was apparently revolutionary to species that have always relied on technological superiority. Through the viewport, Elena watched a human exploration vessel departing for the outer system, its crew including both human scientists and alien researchers. The sight filled her with a sense of possibility that she was still learning to embrace. What would accepting this role mean for our expansion plans? We were hoping to establish colonies in the Centauri system within the next decade. The Assembly would not only permit such expansion, they would actively support it. Human colonies would serve as training centers and strategic reserves for the adaptive response corps. The more humanity spreads throughout the galaxy, the more effectively you can respond to emerging threats. Elena felt excitement building despite her diplomatic training's emphasis on caution. So we could have unrestricted access to Assembly territory? Better than that, Kess replied. You would have priority access to newly discovered systems that might be suitable for human colonization. The Assembly would prefer to have human settlements in strategically important locations. Elena tried to imagine what Captain Hayes would say about humanity being offered unlimited expansion rights in exchange for doing what they did, naturally finding creative solutions to impossible problems. When would the Council need an answer? There is no deadline, Kess assured her. This decision is too important to rush. However, I should mention that 3 other species have already requested human assistance with specific challenges they've been unable to solve, such as the Krillian manufacturing worlds have developed an artificial intelligence that refuses to follow direct orders but seems willing to cooperate with human negotiation techniques. The Synth have encountered a biological plague on one of their research worlds that adapts to every treatment they attempt. And the Vorlek are dealing with energy beings that have taken up residence in one of their power collection facilities. Elena laughed despite herself. So we would be starting immediately? If you choose to accept, yes. But Elena... Kess paused, and when the alien continued, its voice carried a weight that Elena had learned to recognize as profound importance. You should understand that accepting this role would place humanity at the center of galactic politics. You would make enemies among species that prefer the old ways. You would face challenges that